Now, swimming is obviously just one of the three sports of triathlon. So does that mean that we should be spending a third of our training time in the swimming pool?
Well, on the flip side, let's look at distances and take an Ironman, for example, where the swim is just 2% of the overall distance.
Right, so where does that leave us? How much swimming should we be doing as triathletes?
Before we reveal the magic number, I have a spoiler alert, there isn't one. However, there is plenty to consider and lots to look at in this video. But before we crack on with that, we'd love it if you gave us a bit of support at the channel by subscribing and liking this video.
So factors to consider then are things such as your time availability, how your swim, bike and run compare in terms of ability, also what your goals are for the season and logistics for getting to a pool or open water venue.
Oh, and I almost forgot, how you actually use your swim training will have a massive impact on your improvement. And sadly, it's not as simple as just spending more time in the pool, as that won't necessarily make you a better swimmer.
Now, to give you a bit of context or comparison, how much does an actual swimmer do in training? Now, a top club swimmer or elite or pro swimmer will likely be swimming twice a day most days, probably around 10 swims per week. But obviously, they don't need to do other sports, so actually it's not really a fair or realistic comparison.
But before you get too disheartened, you will get some aerobic crossover between the three sports, so not all is lost. But you have to remember that when training for triathlon, it is a compromise between the three sports, the conditioning work and the recovery time. Shall we start with the bare minimum? And only you can answer the question of what your bare minimum is. But if we're realistic, then the absolute bare minimum for anyone is 1 session per week. And if you can't manage that, well, I think you should go and do a duathlon. I mean, jokes aside, even if you are a strong swimmer, you still want to have enough conditioning that you can at least enjoy the bike and the run that come after. So ideally, the minimum really needs to be 2 swims per week. Now, if you've got enough time and you're debating whether you do 1 longer swim or 2 shorter, we would always say go for the 2 shorter swims because there's less time between swimming when you're out of the pool, but also it means that that time, even if it's a bit shorter, you can go there, really nail a strong session, so hopefully you can turn up fresher, but also you can focus on keeping good technique. If 2 sessions are your minimum, well, let's jump to the other end of the spectrum. The maximum amount of swims are 4 to 5 sessions per week. And in fact, at that high end, it's probably best left to the pros to be doing that much swim, as they have more emphasis on that element due to the fact that they have a pack to make. But as an age group athlete where it's non-drafting on the bike, it takes a little bit of the emphasis away from the swim. And we'd say that really a maximum of 4 sessions should be enough. So to recap, 1 session per week is going to give you the absolute bare minimum and maybe a little bit of muscle memory. 2, well, depending on where your baseline is, you could see some small improvements, so you'll at least be maintaining where you're at if you're from a swimming background. If it comes to 3 sessions, then you really can start to work on significant improvements and increasing your distance in your training if you've got a long distance triathlon that you're targeting. 4 sessions a week, well, that's best if you're really wanting to focus on working on improving your swim, and that's a major factor of your triathlon training. And 5, well, I'd say that's best left to the pros.
Okay, so that's frequency covered. How about duration then? Well, as we alluded to earlier, if it's total time that you're after and you're looking at, and you have the option to split this into slightly smaller chunks, then that would be my suggestion, going for more frequent but shorter workouts. But obviously, if cost or time doesn't allow in terms of getting to the venue, then it's okay then to do a longer session just to get that total time and duration up. And the minimum for any real benefit, in my opinion, for a swim is around the 30-minute mark. And also, you don't really need to do any more than an hour. Now, of course, if you're doing a longer distance swim, perhaps in an Ironman, you may feel the need to do a longer swim at some point for confidence. But you only really do this a few times before the event, and actually a lot closer to the event itself. It's a bit like training for a marathon. We wouldn't really suggest that you actually do the marathon distance prior to the event at all. So let's take the happy medium of around the 40 to 50-minute mark. This is long enough to get good quality work in, but also not so long that form might start to fall apart and you're enforcing that bad technique.
Well, if we summarize that and take the frequency and the duration together, we'd suggest doing 2 to 3 swims per week of around 45 minutes in duration. Upping that if you answered yes to Mark's earlier questions.
Yeah, and all that being said, there are 2 final and very important points to cover. The first being the season. Now, your training and swimming should not stay the same throughout the whole year. In fact, it should vary quite considerably.
Yeah, exactly. And let's say swim is your weakest discipline, yet during the main bulk of the race season, you just simply don't have time to focus on it. Then use your off season to really work on this. I mean, if it's in the winter, surely a heated swimming pool is going to be far more appealing than spending hours out on the bike in the cold. And you can start to really concentrate on your technique as well as upping some of your mileage. I mean, if you ever look at swimmers with envy who only actually get in the pool once or twice a week and nail it in a triathlon, remember those hours that they will have banked when they were younger. And to a certain extent, that's what you can do with those winter miles, which will carry over into your season.
Yeah, and the swimming should change and adapt as you get closer to the race as well. One thing for sure is trying to get some open water swim training in. And it's so important, in fact, if it does, for instance, take longer for you to get to that open water venue, that you feel the need to drop a pool session, then we'd actually suggest that's a good idea. Just extend the open water session a little bit and do that alongside one of the technique or speed work sessions.
Yeah, and that brings us on to the final point, structure. Whenever you do head to do your training, you need to know what you're trying to get out of it. As like we said earlier, doing miles in the pool isn't necessarily going to make you better. So know whether it's for conditioning work and you're doing endurance, are you concentrating on technique for that session? Is it thresholding? You're really trying to bump up your fitness. Maybe it is an easy swim, but as long as you know your why, then you're going to be benefiting.
Yeah, and you're far better off just doing 2 very focused quality swims rather than 4 mixed and unstructured swims with very little focus in them. Now, if you are looking for tips on your technique or some session ideas, then we've got tons of them on our channel, so go check them out.
Yeah, now hopefully we have helped to answer your question. We can't answer yours directly because, like we said, there's so many factors to consider, but I'm now hoping that you have at least got a guidance with how much swim training you need to be doing. Well, good luck with that.
Yeah, and if you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe.